Football fans were understandably concerned when earlier today, Rodrigo Bentancur of Tottenham appeared to seemingly just collapse and need treatment on the field for an extended period of time and make some funny, abnormal-looking jaw movements before we saw this concerning play. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Brian Sutterer, and the goal in this channel is to teach more about the medical side of the sports world. So I got a lot of questions about what exactly happened here with this collapse for Rodrigo Bentancur. And I'm going to tell you, nothing about this really should be controversial or seem unusual. Looking back at the replay, it's very clear that he hits his head, loses consciousness, and we're dealing with a concussion here. I think what we saw with some of these jaw movements beforehand were just him moving his mouth in a certain way, but had nothing to do with what we ultimately saw on this play. So before this whole sequence, earlier in the game, nearing about the 6th minute in the match, we see Bentancur right here, and there's this corner kick, and he's going out to try and head the ball. As he turns to head the ball, because he's rotating his head so much off to the side to try and head the ball into the net, he gets his body in this awkward position. He loses sense of where he is in space, tries to put that right arm out to protect and brace his fall, but continues down and just hits his head on the pitch. I mean, there's nothing unusual. This isn't like a sudden cardiac collapse sort of thing. He's diving out to try and make this play. He falls, hits his head on the field, and goes unconscious. I don't think there's any real mystery to what occurred. We can see as he's then down on the field here, he's motionless, seemingly unconscious for at least a brief period of time, as his teammates and ultimately the medical staff get out there to see him. Now, this was the moment just before that corner kick that people seem to be sharing about, oh man, look at his jaw moving funny. Did he have a stroke or something like that? There's nothing that happens before this play that makes me worry about some unusual previous head injury that was just missed. Yeah, he's moving his mouth around in a certain way, but you never know. I mean, people have different like nervous tics that they do in terms of weird facial movements. You might have gum or something like that. And the fact that we then clearly saw him as he was trying to dive and make that header, smack his head on the pitch, there's nothing about this that makes me think, boy, he had a stroke or some unusual thing. He didn't collapse. He went out to make an awkward dive to try and get that header attempt, hit his head on the pitch, and was unconscious from a concussion. It's pretty simple. Now, very important learning point here that I want to get across. Whenever Bentancur went down, his teammates rushed over to him, and it looked briefly like they were trying to kind of get him up and almost pull on him a little bit. This is something that we frequently see in the sports world where a teammate collapses, somebody goes down, they're unconscious, they injure themselves. And understandably, teammates are concerned, they want to go help. And so they go and they try and roll somebody out. There's this fear about choking on the tongue, which is not anything that you actually need to be worried about in these situations. And they try and like roll the player over, get them to move, pull their tongue out of their mouth. Don't do anything like that in these situations. If you're a player and your teammate collapses like this, you have medical staff there. Don't try and move or do anything to the player before the medical staff gets out there. Because in that situation, when you've fallen, you've landed awkwardly on your head with your neck twisted a certain way, you don't know if there could be a neck or a cervical spine injury. And the medical staff is going to get out there and appropriately prepare, intervene, thinking about the possibility of a neck injury, which means we don't want to suddenly and aggressively start to flip somebody over and roll them around. So I appreciate the medical staffs. We appreciate that players want to help. But in these situations, if you're somewhere with medical staff, do not try and move somebody and roll them over and try to help. I know you want to, but it just can make things worse. Now, if you're out without medical staff and you're trying to stabilize, do the best you can, okay. Still, generally, we try and not move people a lot if we have trained providers who are going to be on their way. This image is a great example of what you don't really want to do. You can see in this position here, right, there's this posturing, this rigidity in Bentancur's left hand. Again, suggestive of that outward sign of an internal traumatic brain injury or concussion. It looks to me in this picture like his teammate is wanting to, or at least tempted to, turn his head over to try and wake him up. Do not do this. This is not the right way to stabilize the neck or the spine. We, again, appreciate that people want to help, but leave them alone. Don't try and arouse, wake them up, roll them over, etc. This is what we eventually want to see. We see the medical provider here at his head. He's appropriately stabilizing the cervical spine while the rest of his team helps do their evaluation. And there's specific ways that we are trained to roll the athlete from being prone on their stomach onto their back in a safe manner, and then appropriately maintain control and stability of that neck while you're undergoing your evaluation. Now, this next image was getting shared as kind of a sign of, oh my goodness, look at how terrible this whole situation was. What will sometimes happen in these instances, whenever an athlete is initially unconscious and you're trying to do your evaluation, stabilize them, etc., is they can start to regain consciousness. When they regain consciousness, they don't know where they are. They have a hard time following directions, and oftentimes they'll try to sit up. We saw this happen in hockey with John Tavares a couple of years or so ago, where a player that's unconscious tries to get up while you're stabilizing them, you're trying to protect them, and you end up with situations like this, where they're still trying to stabilize and control that cervical spine, but Rodrigo probably was starting to regain some consciousness and forcibly trying to get himself up. When this happens, we do the best we can. We try to calm, reassure the athlete, keep them safe, keep them protected, to ultimately get their neck stabilized and get them off the field or off the court. The last update we saw from the team was that he was alert. He was talking at the stadium. They were still taking him to the hospital for evaluation. So presumably those are all, of course, very positive things. Still have to be concerned and think about evaluation for a possible neck injury. But certainly based on what we saw on the pitch, makes very clear sense. Was doing okay. Went out to try to get that header. Fell. Head hit off the turf really hard. Knocked him out. Unconscious. Traumatic brain injury. Concussion. And then everything that we saw afterwards is appropriate in the setting of that traumatic brain injury. So no real controversy here, nothing unusual that makes me think there's something else bizarre going on. But let me know as always any questions or comments down below. And until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.